Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your heretic hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Today, John finally gets to talk about one of his favorite relics unearthed from the near bottomless fathoms of the light novel hole, a certain magical index. But how do the King of Misfortune and his trusty nun sidekick fare in the show's long-awaited third season? Stick around to find out, and after that, I'll put on my running shoes and join the motley crew from Kansai University in their quest to conquer the prestigious Hakone Ekiden Relay Marathon and to find their very own road through life. Can the studio that brought you Haikyuu deliver another runaway hit? Sorry, not sorry at all. Regardless, you'll find out in my review of Run with the Wind. So don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.
Right, so, it's time for Index 3. Oh boy, it's time for Index 3. Index 3, as you might imagine, is the third season, following the story of Toma Kamijo, who is, as you alluded to earlier, has a life riddled with misfortune, especially when he comes across a young nun named Index, who has absorbed into her knowledge the information contained within these 103,000, yes, that's 103 followed by 3 zeros, grimoires with all sorts of crazy magical information. So this little girl is just this storehouse of magical knowledge that everyone wants to get their hands on and get this info from. But we can skip. I think we can skip all past the first and second seasons because, you know, who needs that information, right?
I mean, I have watched the parts of the first season, but a refresher would be appreciated.
Okay, I guess that's fine. There's a lot to break down if we want to do a full refresh, but
well, you can try to give us the cliff notes, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just going to give you like the high-level overview of each major arc because each series covers about 6 or 7 arcs, and there's a lot of story in Index. Yeah. I didn't realize, honestly, just how much they crammed into each series, and that's for better or for worse.
I feel it wasn't that apparent in the first season. It felt pretty
in the
first
two seasons. No, it's not really. Oh boy, in the third season. But yes, it's also worth noting that Index runs a lot of its story runs concurrent with a companion story called a certain scientific railgun. Excuse me. And
just
there's
one of the side characters in Index.
Yes, and there is overlap in there when the third season of Railgun airs. It's either later this year or next year. We get to go back to some of the story that we saw in Index 1. So
yay, and you get to talk about it all over again when we review Railgun.
Or excuse me, it was Index 2. My bad, I'm mixing things up. Oh, it's been a minute since I've watched Index 1 and 2, and I probably should have rewatched them, but I didn't. So we start off Index with... Where else would we start but the Index arc, where Toma meets the titular character, and he is shown to have this mysterious power in his right arm that is called the Imagine Breaker, which is capable of pretty much negating any magical power thrown at it. Well, and in some cases scientific, but that's another part of the story. But that it's the basic setup where we see this huge dichotomy between, oh, I am the anti-magic bullet, and I am the big magical MacGuffin character. So we get our setup in the first 5 or 6 episodes of that. They kind of try to, as far as I could tell, looking over the episode numbers, they kind of tried to keep each arc within about 4 or 5 episodes. There's exceptions as the series moves forward, for better and for worse. So after our introductions to our characters, we have the Deep Blood story, which introduces two characters, Himegami Isa and Aurelius Izard, who are both alchemists, and Izard used to be a partner of Index, and a lot of that comes down to, hey, you should come back to the church. No. And, Toma ends up in the middle of everything all over again.
As it happens.
And that's a central theme throughout. Then we get the Sisters arc, which is basically earlier on, we get an introduction to Misaka Mikoto, who is the titular railgun from the other series, whose power allows her to hypercharge things with electricity and send them flying at high speed, much like an actual railgun does in theory. So, as she is shown to take a simple just metal coin and boom, snap that thing out of her fingers at hundreds of miles an hour.
Were both Index and Railgun light novels before, or did Railgun get its own anime spin-off because the character was so popular in Index?
Railgun started as a manga.
Okay.
That came out after. The first major arc of Railgun is called the Level Upper arc, and talking about all of the arcs in Railgun kind of exceeds the scope of what I'm trying to go for.
Sure.
But to put it in perspective, Level Upper takes place coincident with the beginning of Index. So
Right.
it takes place at the same time. So at that point, the two characters, Toma and Misaka, don't know each other.
Mm-hmm.
The Sisters arc basically focuses on there's a whole ton of Misaka clones that are being used in an experiment called the Level 6 Shift, where we get our introduction to another character, calls himself Accelerator, and
The big asshole.
deal. Oh god, Accelerator is a massive jackass when we first meet him.
Yes.
His deal is he is trying to use these Misaka clones as training dummies so that he can achieve the mythical level 6 that to this point doesn't exist, or that we know of.
What a massive plan.
Yeah, and the fight between Toma and Accelerator is an awesome knockdown, drag-out fight.
Yeah, it's great. It's one of the things I really, really liked about what I saw in the first season.
Yeah, it's definitely like one of the big highlights of the first season. After that is the Angel Fall arc, which concerns the activation of a worldwide spell known as Angel Fall. It's which is basically its most notable effect is to send an angel down to Earth and cast its judgment against all of the people on there. And the escalation is pretty quick in that regard to this. And it's a little crazy. We get introductions to even more characters. It's kind of hard to cover everyone in the story because the cast of Index and Railgun and Accelerator is huge. It's really huge.
It feels like this is one of the things that's like, hey, if you read this as a novel, this is not one of the super problematic things because you're reading the characters' names all the time and everything. Just like in maybe, I don't know, Game of Thrones, for example, where it's like if you watch this as a TV show and you get like new character, new episode, new character, new episode, new character, you might lose track of some of the cast pretty quickly. And I don't even know how long most of these characters stay around during the course of the 3 seasons.
I mean, like the major characters, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
That you are intended to care about will stick around. You'll be like, oh, it's been a few episodes since I've seen this person, but they're back, sort of thing.
Your Railgun, Accelerator, Toma, Index, of course, they are
a lot of
around, I guess.
A lot of the big members of the church that are there to cause havoc for Academy City are pretty regularly occurring. After Angel Fall, there's this like mini arc of side stories involving Toma and Accelerator that it's there for character development, but I don't think it really bears mentioning in the grand scheme of things of
Just-
what I'm trying to highlight.
I just remember there's this weird story with Accelerator taking care of a weird little lowly version of Mikasa or something.
That does become Last Order, as her name is, does become
right.
important later.
Okay, well, there's that then.
So, Misaka, as she constantly refers to herself in the third person, is a pretty key element in Accelerator's story, and what kind of much later on brings his character back around. Okay, and we close out Index 1 with the Kazakiri Hyoka arc, who is a physical manifestation of all of the Esper's AIM diffusion fields in Academy City. And what's an AIM diffusion field?
What? You lost me.
An AIM diffusion field, which is short for an involuntary movement,
Okay.
is a term that's used to refer to the phenomena where espers involuntarily emit invisible energy fields from their bodies. So it's basically their residual energy has basically coalesced together to make this character Hyoka, and oh boy, it's just sort of there to be a thing. And Hyoka comes into play again later on during Index 3, but
Is it just me, or is the ratio of technobabble in this show too damn high?
yes, there's a lot. There is a lot of weird technobabble that doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it kind of becomes a lot to chew on all throughout.
But can you still follow, like, the basic plot? It sounds like, at least in the first 2 seasons, that's still manageable. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that you maybe don't quite get a grasp on, but you still understand where the characters are coming from and where they're going and their development and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly do feel like the character development and the plot progression in Index 1 and 2, for as overly complicated as they can be on the granular level that they're trying to go for, it's still manageable to follow, and you can still make some level of sense out of it. So, okay, we've gone through Index 1. That's a lot. It's a lot, and I've condensed it down as much as I can. We're going to do the same for Index 2.
That's where I'm out already, because I haven't even watched the last arc that you just mentioned from Index 1. I stopped watching the series before that started, so...
Well, it's honestly kind of a shame, because I still think there's some value to the first 2 series.
Yeah, and I tried to get back into it, but, I was like, oh, there's still more coming, and maybe I'll wait until it's all wrapped up. And apparently now, we'll see. We get to that, so...
We will. So we start off Index 2 with the rescue of Ursula Aquinas. Ursula Aquinas is a member of the Roman Catholic Church, so now we're bringing actual proper churches into this. Ursula has found a way to decipher the mysterious Book of the Law, which is a grimoire that's said to hold great power. This marks, the first time that Toma fights with the Roman Catholic Church, as well as 2 different Christian sects. The Anglican Church, specifically a faction specifically called Necessarius, and another part of the Roman Catholic Church called the Agnès Forces. So right out the gate, in the first 5 episodes of Index 2, to borrow a phrase from one of my favorite people on YouTube, Philip DeFranco, we just jump right into it. After that all goes down, we have the very brief tree diagram remnant arc.
Jesus Christ.
So we kind of shift gears a little bit. Colloquially, Index is referred to as the magic side, and Railgun is referred to as the science side.
Yeah.
We kind of shift gears. Yeah, we kind of shift gears slightly to the science side for one of the characters from that side of the story, Kuroko Shirai. And Kuroko, she is a very precocious child, and she is, how can I word this lightly, exceptionally gay for Misaka.
Yes, I noticed that when I watched a couple of episodes of Railgun. Like she's the teleporter, right?
Yes, continually wringing her hands together and referring to Misaka as, "Oh, One-sama!"
Of course.
But yes, her power involves being able to teleport around. She carries around these sort of, not quite needles, but she can just sort of fling them into people by teleporting them. And the thought of that just sounds incredibly painful to just think about. Just, oh, a needle appeared in my leg. Ow, sort of deal. But yeah, the tree diagram is a supercomputer which basically served as a computational device for pretty much all of Academy City, which I don't know if I mentioned earlier. Academy City is this like artificial island that's man created. It's floating out in the ocean, and it serves as basically like this big tech center for the world. And you know, they have all sorts of as you might imagine from the name Academy City, all sorts of schools and whatnot. And it's like the technical nexus for the world, which you might imagine in the whole magic versus science overarching narrative of the show serves as having a large target on its back for a lot of our church friends to want to have to go after.
Science versus religion, a popular theme.
That is the crux of it. Just told in a very weird way. The tree diagram is stolen by this other teleporter Esper named Awaki Musujime, and Misaka and all of her clones join in all the action to get this computer back and get everything up and running again. And it's the start of a weird trend that comes more into play later on in Index 3, and I'll go into that. Next, we get the Daiha Seisai, which is the big athletics festival that's held every year in Academy City on September 19th, which becomes sort of an important date later on. It's this big sporting event, and for Toma, the year's festivities have come with a twist as he finds himself having to foil a plot that could wreck the fragile balance between the worlds of science and magic yet again. So another big overarching story that kind of covers several arcs on its own is the fight against the Roman Catholic Church. Damn those Catholics! Damn them all!
Are they the big bads in the story in general, or?
Kind of, yes. Okay. They have to deal with a secret organization called the Right Seat of God. Each member of the Right Seat of God has their own motivations, but their end goal is the same. Can you guess what it is? If you guess the destruction of Academy City, bing, 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 you're correct. We get introduced to, like, Fiamma of the right, Aqua of the rear, and a few others who I'll cover as we go on later on. During that, we have the Queen of the Adriatic Sea, which is an arc which is connected to Toma mysteriously winning a trip to northern Italy in spite of his misfortune. But here he's caught within yet another RCC conspiracy. And what is the Queen of the Adriatic Sea? Well, it's the name of two magical related objects. And
here I thought it would be a boat.
Well, you would think that. I mean, kind of, but also not kind of. Most notably, it is the name of a 9th century large-scale weapon and flagship. There we go. Created by the RCC, which is how I'm going to refer to the Roman Catholic Church from now on, so I don't have to trip over my words. It was used against Venice to destroy its influences in its culture, and it's one of the 10 holy artifacts of the RCC. Though it's a powerful weapon itself, the flagship requires several other ships made of ice as a convoy. These ships are called the Queen's Fleet, as reference to it being the fleet of the flagship. After that, we return to Academy City for the Academy City invasion arc, where we got our introduction to another of the right seed of God, Vento of the Front. So basically, Toma is now public enemy number 1. And this sort of introduces Accelerator's big struggle with his protection of Last Order as he fights against his former mentor, Mata Kihara. Again, we get a sort of blend between the magic and science arcs. In universe, this is referred to as the September 30th incident. The date thing sort of becomes a thing as we go on. It's weird.
Remember the 30th of September?
Kind of.
Okay, sure.
A lot of this acts as the catalyst for Index 3, basically. Like I said, we get their first named introduction to one of the right seed of God. Index 2 kind of wraps up with the Skill Out Uprising. So, Skill Out... Skill Out is basically... an armed force that tries to keep the peace in Academy City. But Skill Out is comprised of what are referred to as level zeros. Level zeros basically have little to no Esper skill.
That makes sense in terms of how this is set up, and everyone wants to achieve that higher level form.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole level upper thing I referred to from Railgun earlier is this drug that goes around that sort of tries to raise the level of Espers with super bad and nasty side effects. Don't do drugs, kids. But the Skillo Uprising would have culminated in disabling Academy City's communication network, allowing people to attack Espers. But the plan fails after after the death of one of the higher-ups who tried to execute this plan, and we get introduced to someone who becomes very key later on actually pretty early on in Index 3, Shiage Hamazura, and he becomes the subordinate of another organization called Item. There's a lot of different organizations. They all kind of start to run together, but I'll try to keep explanations as close to Item as I can, because we get other organizations called Member, School, Block, and several others that actually are not actually worth mentioning because they only really are in the background and they exist.
So wait, are we still in Season 2 territory, or is this 3 already?
We just hit the end of Season 2.
Okay. Because you remember mentioning some of those, and it sounded like they were an integral party in Season 3, so I was a bit confused there.
Yes. Hamazura has a much larger role in Season 3.
Okay.
Season 3. So up to this point, the way I'm explaining it sounds confusing.
Yes. I mean, that's not your fault.
Because it is.
It's a bunch of characters and terms and allegiances and parties jammed into 2 seasons. How many episodes does each season have, by the way?
Index 1, I believe they were each, the first 2 seasons were 24 episodes.
Each.
Index 3, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. And Index 3 was 26 episodes, so it ran a little longer. And I'm going to be honest, Index 3 probably should have run longer than it did. Index 3 starts off with Toma making its way to Avignon, France, in order to negate the power of the titular artifact of this arc, the Document of Constantine, which is basically this artifact that's used to mind control people, and the RCC is using it to be like, Academy City is bad and you shouldn't like them. And this is where Toma has his showdown against Terra of the Left. Terra of the Left has the ability to change the precedence of objects and basically be like, say you're trying to put out a fire with water, he could change the precedence. So water puts out fire, right? So you would then say water has precedence over fire. It has a higher precedence.
Yes.
He could use his ability to change the precedent that water has one lower than fire, so that it wouldn't be able to put it out.
Ah, okay.
That's the gist of his power. He can change. He can change how effective one thing is against another, and it's an interesting ability. It's not really demonstrated all that well in the show. The problems with Index 3, the problems with Index 3 become immediately apparent because it moves at a breakneck pace. If you thought I was going through stuff really quickly in the first 2 series, and I was, this ain't got shit on Index 3. Right. Delve much deeper into the rest of the story of Index 3. I'm pretty sure the director, Hiroshi Nishikori, basically said, yeah, I wanted Index 3 to be about 50 or so episodes. And oh boy, it feels like it. Which I don't understand, because in terms of number of arcs, Index 3 covers about the same amount of material as the first 2 series do. But
maybe some of the later arcs are longer?
That might be the case. I mean, I don't know. As far as each arc goes, each arc is 1 volume. And I don't know if Kamachi, the series original creator, Kazuma Kamachi, if some novels were longer than others. I didn't take the time to look up exact page counts. I'm sorry. But season 3 also had an entirely different writing crew.
Oh, okay.
Between I'm not going to run down the full writing credits because the writers for season 3, I'll give you names, and if you all want to look them up, we have Hiroyuki Yoshino, Kenji Sugihara, Ryunosuke Kingetsu, and Tsuyoshi Tamae. They all have written, and worked on some good stuff if you look up their credits. So I was like, yeah, this seems like it should be a pretty good slam dunk. Also, for reference, Nishikori directed a lot of other good stuff like Azumanga Daioh, the previous indexes, one of the Negima specials, Trinity 7, which I won't deny that Trinity 7 is goofy and dumb, but it's a fun show. He worked a little bit on Outlaw Star. He worked on Angelic Layer, which was Mega Man Battle Network before Mega Man Battle Network, so hey, there you go. But yeah, it should have been. It sounds like it should have been just this good crew with this. Index is a confusing, weird story, but it's in its over complexities. It still has an interesting story and some cool characters surrounding it. One of the original writers from Index 1 and 2, Masanao Akahoshi, did not return for this show, though. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You can't pin the downfall of a production on one person, but I wonder if him being there would have helped. Because Index 3, right from the get-go, there's weird pacing issues. A mutual friend of ours, I remember talking to him and saying to him, what's going on with Index 3? And he said, because he's more familiar with a lot of the story from the manga and the light novels, yeah, they're rushing it. They're rushing it super hard.
It sounds like what happened to the final Inuyasha final arc, which apparently you got this anime adaptation that ran for a long while, and then a lot later got like a 24 episode series or something. And everyone who watched it said this sucks. This feels like it's super rushed. Like the character development is cut mega short, and stuff happens out of nowhere, and it makes no sense. And for some reason, it feels like we just want to wrap this up. And I don't know. Sounds a bit like Index 3 is the same in that regard.
Weren't there a whole bunch of Inuyasha movies though to fill in details? I mean, I don't remember, but
I think the movies were all side stories. I'm not sure, but that final arc thing was supposed to bring the story to a close and apparently rushed through the manga material like at a breakneck pace as well. And left out a lot of stuff and changed stuff around and went way too fast with all this stuff. It's like, the first series apparently took its time to get there, sometimes way too long. And then suddenly you get that final chapter that is super, super rushed. Which is weird.
We kind of have the opposite problem here with Index. We sort of rush to the finish line, and then the last big story is drawn out, but it's still kind of weird and confusing. Because the most time they spend on any one individual arc leading up to the final story of Index 3 is 5 episodes. Everything else is 3 episodes. Okay. So it's super condensed and super I had moments where I was like, I didn't miss an episode, did I?
No, that's never a good sign.
No,
what is going on?
Like I said, I think Nishikori was trying to stretch it out. JC staff and the sponsors wouldn't give him the budget, so he was like, fuck it, I'm going to get us to the end of Index, and I'm going to cram it down as much as I can, which... No.
So wait, is the third season is the end of the third season the end of the full light novel material, or is there still stuff coming?
Yes and no.
Okay.
After the end of Index, or in this case Index 3, there is another story called A Certain Magical Index New Testament. Which I imagine... Which, is a very on-point name, and I like that it's very on-brand, which I imagine will be where Index 4 picks up if it comes back. Oh, boy!
So how is the show looking? I mean, JC Staff is producing it, animating it, and I remember the first season looking really good in some parts, especially that fight we mentioned earlier between Accelerator and Toma.
The first 2 seasons, the first season looks great. I think the second season kind of keeps up. It still looks pretty good. Oh, the third season's a fucking mess.
No.
It looks bad out the gate. It looks real bad. When your opening sequence doesn't look that great, you have problems.
Yeah.
There's so many badly framed shots. There's so much really just bad. There's so much bad animation. There's so many. I remember there was more than one shot where they would cut from one thing to the next in the same scene. And I was like, wait, what? And I had to go back and rewind it 3, 4, 5 times to understand what they were trying to convey going from one cut to another. It was bad.
So they would show the same character but from different angles, or how can I
really don't know how to adequately explain it, because it's just the shift between certain scenes and certain cuts and what they were trying to go for was like, I don't understand what you guys were trying to do.
Okay. Sounds like this was a troubled production, not only in writing, but the storyboards also not all handled that well.
Well, I think it's I've been seeing it for a while now. I think my numbers were wrong when I was previously complaining about JC Staff, because Food Wars Season 3 was a spring 2018 show, and I feel like that was the real big start of JC Staff's decline in terms of quality. Because the second half of Food Wars Season 3, it looked good when it needed to, but in other parts I remember just kind of being...
It didn't reach the heights that Season 1 and 2 did. But, it still felt mostly competent. And, I wasn't like... Giant-ass cliffhanger aside, I wasn't, put off by it and didn't feel like, okay, this needed more work. But, some of the other productions we talked about that came after it are, worrying when it comes to the trajectory of the studio. And maybe we were missing some shows that look great, and that's, where all the manpower went and everything. But yeah, I don't know what else they did in those seasons and those shows, aside from the shows that we covered. And most of those didn't look good. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't want to step too ferociously into the next episode we're going to be recording, but next time around we're going to be talking, or I am going to be talking about a show that ran concurrent with this one that was also animated by JC Staff, that it looked better. It looked better in some spots, but in other spots you could still see how really exorbitantly rough it was. At least in that other show, the characters looked on model 85 to 90% of the time. That's something. Because there is this, the last big fight in Index 3, there's a part of it where it's more of a war of words, but there's just big stare down and this showdown between Toma and one of the right hand of God's members. I keep saying the name wrong. Right seat of God, right hand of God, whatever, however you want to refer to it. I'm pretty sure it's interchangeable. And Toma has this moment where he figures out, this is why you can't beat me. And it's like, oh shit. And there's this one moment where it's completely undone, because there's just maybe 30 or 40 frames where they called in the D team, and it's like, oh my god, dude. Ooh. Not even the C team, not even the B team, we're going D team.
So it's supposed to be this super climactic, thrilling moment, and the animation looks so wonky that it completely dismantles all engagement that you have at that moment, at that point in the show.
Yep.
That's a shame. I hate it when that happens.
The other thing about this is, I honestly thought they were trying to spin in elements of the science side, because Hamazura's story has to deal with Item, and Item is kind of a major part of the Railgun story. And I was like, so they're trying to spin in, the other side of the story, but apparently they weren't. Apparently Kamachi just sort of decided, hey, let's try blending the magic and science sides together. And Hamazura's story is a muddled mess of him trying to save the other members of Item from their very despotic and fucking crazy leader, Mugino. We got our intro to Mugino in part of Railgun, and she seems, not a bad person, just, kind of, she has misguided aims. And then we realize through Index 3, oh no, she's a terrible fucking person. And the conflict between Hamazura and Mugino sort of comes to a head in it, and it's violent. It's holy shit how it goes down. I don't want to give too much away about that, but god damn, dude.
And that looks good?
It looks all right. It's impactful, but, it's a lot of the stuff throughout Index 3 is lacking the punch that it really needs to. You can take that for a pun whether or not you want to, because of Toma.
Yeah. I mean, talking about another JC Staff production in Food Wars, that often has not the best kind of presentation in terms of animation quality itself, but manages to compensate with great direction. With great staging, with great editing, and how the scenes come together, and how they create a certain impact with that. And does Index 3 have at least some of that, where it's that doesn't look too good, but some of those moments are well directed? Or is it no, this is I don't know, lackluster most of the way through?
The problem is, it's just because of the pace it moves at, it gets confusing and it just lacks a lot of its impact. Because after the document of Constantine, we go through the Battle Royale arc, which is, the big side story involving Hamazura and Item, and they just sort of blow through that real quick. Then we get our introduction to Aqua of the Rear in his impossibly huge sword. We get the British royal family arc, which is just a big infight between the members of the royal family. Which that is also really weird because it deals with the magical sword Cortana, but one of the princesses of the royal family, Carissa, gets her hands on it and tries to do some really wonk ass shit with it, and oh boy, it's a thing. After that is the dragon arc, because dragons that aren't actually dragons, but there are dragons, but it deals with the manifestation of this angel named Awas, and after that we get into where we were actually trying to get to from the beginning, World War III.
Of course, the logical endpoint to any story.
The big gist of World War III is like the big boss of the right seat of God, Fiamma of the Right. His power, the way it works is it's proportional to that of the threat presented to him. So what better way to give himself all the power he needs than by creating a world war? And it's weird and strange, and they sort of jump around between story beats in a weird way that makes things not really make any sense. And we end on a cliffhanger because they're so confident they're going to come back for New Testament. And I don't know, man. And what's more, before this show wrapped up, they announced a certain scientific accelerator and Railgun 3, which I'm going to watch them. I don't know why I'm going to watch them, but I know I'm hoping, fingers crossed like 3 times over, that the production on them is better. I'm not holding my breath too hard, though.
I'm keeping you in my thoughts. It's like, I mean, at this point you're in no matter what, I guess, because you've consumed all of that universe until now, and
it's kind of like a certain other show that we were going to eventually talk about this season, but that one's more of a Stockholm Syndrome effect.
Well, there you go.
And if you know me, you probably already know what show it is. Yay!
Yep.
Before we move on to Run with the Wind, though, there's one last big thing I want to talk about. Nishikori took to Twitter after the series ended, and he basically said, hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with us. It's glad to know that there's still people out there who want to check this out. And, okay, sure. I mean, I still have my criticisms for you, dude, and the way you chose to not. You could have done you could have made World War III its own series, and it probably would have been better for it. And that way, the other arcs would have had time to breathe. And that's a criticism that I feel like is valid, and I feel like that's a criticism that is without any sort of malice behind it. Everybody jumped on him. People on both sides of the pond, both in Japan and in the West, throwing all sorts of nasty vitriol at him. Don't fucking do that. Do not do that. Like, why?
Was it like you ruined our lives or something?
Yeah, it's like no. Don't. The guy was trying to make the show he saw fit. Did it work out? No, it didn't. But you don't have the right to go after him and say, fuck you, go kill yourself. I hope you don't find any more work. Because it's clear he has the directing chops. Just he made poor decisions. That much is clear. Just that's awful. everyone who replied to him and gave him all sorts of terrible shit on Twitter, you people are terrible. Like, like I said, I have my own criticisms, but I didn't go on Twitter to say to him, what's wrong with you? Why did you do this? Please, come on, have some common sense, people. This is what drives people away from their jobs and away from the industry. And I don't know what else to say other than that on this subject, but it sucks.
I don't want to excuse that, but sadly this is, the standard procedure for a lot of media or mass consumed media that is then, dissected on the web. And
you're right, because we're seeing that now with Game of Thrones.
Yeah, naturally. And, I have my misgivings with the final season, of course, but I would never fucking try to search out the creators of this show and be like, you suck at your job, fuck off, I hope you die, or at least never get to work again. That's so dumb. And it's like these people who make fucking petitions, sign petitions for HBO to remake that final season.
Jesus fucking Christ, I can't
get alive,
over that.
People. What the fuck?
After Martin came out
so
and said,
stupid.
yeah, that ending. After Martin came out and said, yeah, that ending is kind of in line with what I was going for. It's like, okay, all right, fine.
Yeah. It's like, they should have taken more time to get there, and a lot of the, the character development is too rushed and doesn't make sense in that context. Maybe some more if you have read the books and stuff like that. But, it's an ending. It could have been worse. There's some conclusion. There's some form of closure, right? So that's okay. Of course, it could have been better. But, there's no reason, like, these people didn't come into your house and, after watching the final season, fucking ripped your TV off the wall and jumped on it and trampled around on it. Like, what the fuck? What's your problem, guys? It's just a fucking show. Then this one TV show you consumed sucked. Well, shit happens. No. Get over it.
Yeah, it's not the end of your life. You'll get over it and you'll move on.
I'm still embarrassed because I might have tweeted when Man of Action or when that new Mega Man cartoon was coming out.
Fully Charged.
Fully Charged, yeah. And I saw who was responsible for it. So the trailer was like, this is garbage. And I went to Man of Actions, who are the writers for this apparently, who have, in my opinion, never made a good cartoon in their fucking life. Or written a good cartoon in their fucking life. And I just went there and said, please stop making cartoons. But I wasn't aggressive. Like I just said, please don't do this anymore. You're not good at it. But I wasn't trying to be an asshole.
Yeah, that is the mildest form that could take.
And I was still embarrassed after that. I was like, why did I do that? That was dumb. That was really stupid. Why would you do that? It's a version of the character. Maybe it's not for me. Some kids will maybe grow up with this and love this version. So that's fine too. Yeah. And so whatever. It's never worth to get so fucking enraged over a thing and then you can vent on it on Twitter, sure. You can, air your misgivings, say why you don't like stuff. I mean, that's what we do on this show. We say you spend this most of the time of this recording saying why season 3 of Index didn't appeal to you. But, respectfully and not directly aim at, unless they listen to the show, which I doubt.
Can you
Why wouldn't that be a twist?
Can you imagine Nishikori listening to this podcast and being like, this motherfucker?
Damn, this John person.
I can't believe this. Oh, I'm gonna go to his home.
Yeah, but never go directly to the people, but not to the actors in the movie you didn't like, not to the fucking directors, not to the writers, and tell them that they are bad people for not writing your favorite, or not directing, or not acting your favorite show well. This is ridiculous, and if you do that, you are a bad human being. You should be ashamed of yourself. These are my 2 cents on that. So,
I think I remember there was another similar thing recently with it was Star Wars: The Last Jedi, where everyone went after Kelly Marie Tran. And it's like, come on, don't do that. I I remember after watching the Hobbit movies, I was like, why was Evangeline Lilly even in this movie? She served no purpose. But I didn't take to social media and be like, oh, you awful person, why weren't you in that? No, don't stop. I think that's the takeaway. Just stop.
Yeah, this is media. This is not your life, or it's not supposed to be. And even if you relate to these characters and stuff like that, they are not you. And don't make this like your only form of existence. Your only reason to live. And don't get so worked up about all this stuff, please. It's better for you. It's better for the people who make it. Just see it as that what it is. It's something to enjoy. And if you didn't enjoy it, well, that can happen. And it maybe sucks, but it's no reason to antagonize people and get vile and aggressive and throw death threats around and shit like that.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I feel a little bad because over the past couple episodes I haven't had a lot of good things to say about the shows that I've been talking about. And I mean, I have more positive things to say about the show I'll be talking about next time. But there's also an asterisk on part of that, so
that's fine.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Hey, no show is perfect, except for Keijo maybe. But
yes.
But it's fine. We have seasons where it's like one banger after another sometimes, or 90% of that, and sometimes we have seasons where we have some shows that just didn't work out, and that keeps things diverse, that keeps things interesting. It cannot always work out the way we want it, but that doesn't mean that we're gonna stop watching the shows that sound interesting to us. So whatever, there's gonna be good shows coming around again, and you're just gonna keep watching.
I mean, in spite of all of that, if you still want to watch Index 3 and you're curious about it, you can watch it on Crunchyroll and Funimation. If you want to watch the first 2 seasons, though, you're going to have to go to Hulu, Yahoo, or Tubi, whatever Tubi is, apparently.
What the hell?
Yeah,
Tubi.
I hadn't heard of Tubi before looking up where they could be streamed, but hey, they're out there. You can watch them. 1 and 2 are great. 3 is 3. It is what it is. But I hope someone out there enjoyed 3 more than I did, but I feel like that might be an out there possibility.
So since I talked extensively about one of my favorite sports anime of all time in the previous episode, I thought it'd be nice to mix things up a little, and so this time I'm going to talk about another sports anime. No, stop! Don't leave, please! Please stay! I'm sorry, but if the show I picked for today's review can show you anything, that this particular genre is not a one-trick pony. Because actually Run with the Wind is vastly different. It's a vastly different show compared to last episode's Captain Tsubasa. Because, Captain Tsubasa was this super shonen-y, kind of pretty much battle anime, very action-packed. And, this Run with the Wind is much more in line with the likes of Haikyuu, and even less action-packed. It's much more laid-back, much more slice-of-life-y. And more focused on the character drama, on the comedy, on finding your way in life. And that's kind of what it's about. So, Kakeru Kurahara, first-year student at Kansei University and former high school elite runner, is chased for stealing food from a store. When a fellow student, introducing himself as Haiji Kiyose, comes to his aid and convinces him to live in the old dormitory Chikuseso that Haiji and a colorful assortment of other students from all age ranges reside in. Kakeru reluctantly accepts, because Haiji is really helping him out there with the shit he just pulled because he knows the store owner and apologizes for, Kakeru's thing, deed, I think, if I remember correctly. But, he moves into Chikuseso, but soon him and the other dudes at the dorm come to realize that Haiji has ulterior motives because he wants nothing less than to build the perfect team able to compete in the prestigious Hakone Ekiden Relay Marathon, which is this 2-day marathon that spans several stages with 10 runners, per team, I think, if I'm not miscounting. Yeah, so can Haiji's unwavering spirit overpower his hesitant teammates? Can this batch of rookies and nobodies overcome their own inner hurdles? And will Kakeru learn the meaning of running together with others? One thing is for sure, the road to the goal is very steep. So, Run with the Wind is originally a novel written by Shion Miura, published in 2006. It was adapted into a manga written by Sorata Uno that ran for 6 volumes between 2007 and 2009. And it also got a live-action film in 2009, and now an anime TV series in fall 2018, running for 23 episodes. All the way through winter. That's why I'm reviewing it now. And the animation production is done by Production IG, who we have mentioned many times on this show. Ghost in the Shell, Psychopaths, Kuroko's Basketball, and Haikyuu, among many other things. And there are actually some people in the crew for Run with the Wind that worked on Haikyuu as well. For example, Takahiro Chiba, who was the chief animation director in all 3 seasons of Haikyuu, is taking over that role for this show as well. Hiromi Kikuta is handling the sound direction again, just like in Haikyuu. One of our favorite composers, Yuki Hayashi, who not only did the music for Haikyuu, but also My Hero Academia, is bringing his A-game to this production as well.
Yes!
And there's also some overlap in the storyboard and episode director section. Director Kazuya Nomura has also been mentioned on our show, but maybe a bit more unfavorably since he directed Joker Game, and that was kind of a mixed bag, but more story-wise than anything else, so, I don't think he can really be faulted for that. Not panning out perfectly. He also directed the 2nd season and the movie of Sengoku Basara, which were a buttload of fun. So there's that. But I think the most interesting production credit goes to the writer and series composer this time, because that is Kohei Kiyasu. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's not because of another writing credit, but Kiyasu is actually the voice of Ippo Makunochi from Hajime no Ippo. He also voiced characters in shows like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Fafner, and Prince of Tennis. But yeah, he's like I said, serious composer and writer on this, which is a very
career change.
Yeah, interesting career change that I don't think I've seen before in anime. And yeah, he did a really good job at that. I imagine most of the groundwork has been laid by the author of the manga, but the dialogues in this show are very well written, natural, funny, relatable, have a very human feel to them. So, I think if this is his first time gig, kudos. Jesus Christ. I think you found a good new career path there. That makes me happy, kind of. Although I'm always into seeing more Hajime no Ippo, so I hope if that happens, he will return to his role. But yeah, and as you might have guessed, this show looks fucking spectacular. Just like Haikyuu, there is a lot of detail put into the movement of the characters. The arms, the legs, the shoulders, the head, the hair bopping back and forth, the cloth animation, the wind and weather effects. All the characters have different running styles. Running is not the most exciting and varied thing to look at movement-wise, because, it's pretty samey. But I'll be damned if these people didn't do their darnest to make all of the visuals look super appealing, which I expected from a IG production. The character models are incredibly distinct and sharp, and a lot of the characters are these mega handsome dreamboats that would make even the most stone-hearted Fujoshi swoon. There's even some pretty good use of CG for the unimportant side characters in the mass running scenes, and for the some more distant shots and pedestrians and stuff like that, and bystanders. This is one of those shows where I had to look twice sometimes before realizing they were using CG, which in this landscape is an accomplishment all by itself, I guess. You know, when compared to other shows we talked about, like in previous episode, Magnificent Kotobuki. In this show, it feels like they're only using CG when they really need to, when it makes sense, because, you know, oh, okay, we have these runners that have the same animation cycle because they're running, and there's no real focus on them, so, you know, let's make them CG so we can save some stuff there. And yeah, that makes sense. And it's not really that noticeable. And then that's totally fine with me. So yeah, good stuff there. But great visuals alone wouldn't cut it. So I'm glad to report that the story is also fantastic.
Hey.
The character roster by itself is spectacular. All the members of the Chikuseiso dorm have such great personalities. The basic setup of the characters being in college and not high school is already more interesting than a lot of other shows in this vein, because these characters are at a very different stage in their lives than they were in high school, obviously. And even now they come at this whole team project from widely different angles. So yeah, let's run down that roster. Of course, there's Kakeru, who I guess is kind of our main character, him and Haiji anyway. But really, this is more of an ensemble show than anything else. Like, all the characters are pretty important to what the show has to say. And it's really, you know, all about the team. So, unlike in Haikyuu, where you can say, okay, yeah, we got the definite two main characters who are the focus in this. Here, it's like, yeah, you got these two guys that sometimes the focus is kind of resting on them a bit, and, you know, who are kind of the people who kicked this into motion, with Haiji being like the instigator of the whole thing, and Kakeru being like the final stone in Haiji's puzzle, or for Haiji's puzzle coming together and for the team coming together. But aside from that, all the team members have their important parts and roles to play in this. And, you know, because after all, this is a relay marathon, so everyone has to run their part of the course. So yeah, it's, like I said, it's more an ensemble show, but Kakeru is a very important character. And yeah, he has a troubled past, especially when it comes to running. And much like the others, he is still trying to find his way in life. There is, of course, Haiji, who is this super optimistic guy with a dream that he's willing to fight tooth and nail for, even though he is handicapped by serious knee injury. He's also not afraid to use some incredibly underhanded methods to make the rest of his teammates like fall in line and join his fight, which is where a lot of the comedy is derived from. Because, you know, he can be kind of a dick when it comes to that. Not super mean, but it's like, yeah, you guys are so outmatched. It's like, it's really good stuff. There is Takashi Sugiyama, who only called Shindo, who kind of becomes the MVP of the team when it comes to doing the legwork, not only in terms of running, but, you know, doing all the side work, like creating a crowdfunding webpage for their club and stuff like that, and for their expenses for running and stuff like that, and taking part in the competitions. He handles that and a lot of other stuff. There are the twins Taro and Jiro Jo, who are your typical hyperactive numbskull goofballs who always stick together and are like kind of the ADHD emotional power force who always manage to motivate the other characters in one way or another, I guess, but are also really, really stupid. There's Yukihiko Iwakura, only called Yuki, who besides Shindo is the smarty pants serious student of the group, who is also one of the most reluctant when it comes to joining this endeavor in the beginning. But he later comes around, but he's like, you know, I don't really, you know, I don't want to do this. This is it feels like nonsense to him, but he has his reasons for that also, and we come to learn those later. We have Musa Kamala, who is an exchange student from Tanzania and kind of the heart of the group, always supportive, always a bit flustered and insecure because his Japanese still is a bit flawed. There is Yohei Sakaguchi, who is only named King because he's a big fan of trivia game shows. Also integral to the team is Akihiro Hirata, who has earned himself the nickname Nico Senpai from the others because he's a smoker. Nicotine, get it? Which, of course, he has to get rid of to run in the marathon, because otherwise his lung would fucking die. And last but not least, there is the best boy, Akane Kashiwazaki, who is only named Prince, as he is the dangly-ass, not fitness or stamina whatsoever nerd, who lives in a room filled from top to bottom with manga, which he actually sleeps on, I think, instead of a futon. He's great.
This sounds very similar to main character from Yowamushi Pedal.
Yeah, but even more so. Like, he's a lost cause, kinda. Like, Sakamichi is like much more, let's say, high energy than Prince. Prince is like really this weird entity that just lies somewhere in the corner and reads a manga in the beginning of the show. Doesn't move at all. Just moving the pages and reading, not doing anything else.
God.
Yeah. But yeah, a bunch of great main characters and fun side characters like Hana, the daughter of a local shop owner who supports them with their training among, some other characters from the town. And of course, some rivals and antagonists later on. So most of the show is about these very different people learning to reluctantly come together and dedicating at least some part of their life to a common goal, be it for the sake of friendship or personal improvement or trying to find meaning in their lives. And like I mentioned in the intro, each of them has some personal hurdles to overcome. King, for example, is almost done with college but hasn't found a job yet. So this is what occupies his mind most of the time. And that's what he's worrying about. And, he doesn't know if he wants to dedicate time to this running thing because, hey, I need to find a job and I need to move on and stuff like that. And, find my place and in life. And Nico Senpai should already be done with studying, but he's still hanging around because he lacks general motivation and hasn't really figured out what to do with himself. Yuki and Shindo have some trouble with their families. The twins are idiots. Musa lacks self-confidence, like I mentioned before. Haiji has his health issues. And Kakeru can be like a real aggressive hothead, which led to a confrontation with his former coach and ruined his high school running career and caused some bad blood between him and his former teammates, which comes, into play later in the show again when they actually start to compete. And a lot of them at the start of the show don't have the training or general physique to come even close to endure long distance running, like let alone compete at a pro event like the Hakone Ekiden. For example, the twins played some soccer before, but not much else. Nico Senpai was a runner, but lost motivation, started smoking, yada, 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 and now is not fit at all anymore. But I guess the one that this relates to the most is obviously Prince, because he just can't do it. He doesn't want to do it. He hates running, but he can't afford to leave the dorm. And Haiji is saying like, hey, if you don't join this running thing, you're out. So he gets, you have to move out. So he gets roped into the whole shebang by Haiji, and his initial attempts at running are so painful and relatable and funny to watch. Like some of my favorite gifts this season. It's so relatable. Like if you've never did running before and you try to, and he looks like a zombie straddling along, and it's ridiculous. And I feel really sorry for him. And naturally, his arc, just in terms of physical improvement alone, is one of the most satisfying ones in the show. Because when the time comes where he has to defy all odds, I dare you not to cheer him together with his teammates. I double dare you. It's one of those moments like that is made for sports anime where it's like, yeah, you can do it, dude. You can do it. Yes, fuck yeah. And it works really well in the show, all in conjunction with the staging of the scene and, the epic swelling music and everything, and every character erupting into emotions and cheers and everything. It's all done really well. It's definitely one of the high points of the show. And of course, it helps that he's also a very sympathetic guy who, despite his outward attitude, is willing to put in the work more than almost anyone else on the team, actually. So, yeah, I guess one of the central themes in the show is like how you run matters, not just the speed. It's like repeated several times in the show. It's not all about winning. It's not getting like giving full force all the time. It's finding your own way, your own tempo, your own pacing. And thus, like, running in the show is like this thinly veiled allegory for living your life. Just like a Devilman Crybaby, where running also was a very big thing. And like a lot of the character stories of finding their personal way in life through this team experience are an inspiration. They're like really good and really hopeful and really emotional. And you'll probably be able to relate to at least some aspect of at least one of those people. Especially if you have had a somewhat shaky late or early college experience, didn't find your place there maybe immediately, or spend some time on soul searching in your adult life because you didn't really know where to go and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure you can relate to at least some of those, at least one of those characters in the show, because they kind of go to similar things for different reasons. And yeah, that's probably the best thing about this show. The competitions themselves, the runs, are also great. I mean, we get the trainings montages in the beginning. The characters have to you learn how to actually run, how to move their bodies and not just, run by instinct. Some of the people run really wonky in the beginning, like Prince. He doesn't just know how to run. And once he learns that there's actually some technique to the whole thing, he learns to, improve and actually is able to improve. And yeah, that's an interesting part. And then, later we get in actual competitions, actual races and qualifiers, and then naturally the actual marathon and the end. And all these races are great. Running in itself is like, it's not as direct as a competition as maybe, some of the other sports shows I've mentioned before, like volleyball, like soccer. There are not like these direct confrontations between people. I mean, you have some scenes where one character overtakes another competitor at the last minute and stuff like that. That's in there, of course, but that's not really where the thrills are gained from. It's because most of the stuff is like, okay, we have to reach a certain time. These are time trials. We have to reach a certain time to qualify for the next race, to qualify for the marathon and stuff like that. And so it's more about that than actual, face-to-face competition and having your rival and stuff like that. And a lot of other sports anime derive their drama and their stuff and their thrills from having characters facing each other and rivals clashing and stuff like that. And Run with the Wind doesn't really have that. It's more about the personal growth of the characters and how they achieve that through the running process, like you did through the team building process. And, there's some stuff with rivals in there. Kakeru has this former teammate, Sakaki, who's a giant asshole. But, has also his reasons, or he thinks he has his reasons for being that way. And of course, he is also in one of the later races, but they actually don't directly run in the same against each other. They're not in the same part of the race, so there's not really a direct competition between those two. There is this guy, Fujioka, who's like this super cool, like the best runner in the college running circles. Like he's the most prominently featured guy, like the superstar. And he's also running in that race. But again, he's the thing that he's the guiding star. He's the thing that Kakeru is trying to achieve. That's his goal, kind of like to reach that height and to run like Fujioka. But again, they also don't compete directly against each other. So it's not like these rivalries are don't come to a conclusion or to a climax in the races themselves. It's more like how our characters perform in these races and how that has an effect later on the other characters when they see, when they see how their rivals perform. And it's not directly in the same race and stuff like that. So it's an interesting approach, but for some people, maybe this is like not direct enough, not thrilling enough. For example, I had some problems with Yuri on Ice because of that, because ice skating is also not a direct competition because every one of the competitors is doing their performance one after another, and then they get their rating, and it's like, hey, that one. And that's, to me, that's not that interesting. And Run with the Wind is still more competitive than that. It's still a more direct thing because there are a lot of same people running at the same time, so there's more happening. But it's still nothing like volleyball or soccer or something like that. It's not like or Hanebado or something like that. So yeah, I liked it because it was something different and was like staged incredibly well. It looked fantastic, but it's not necessarily the kind of competition I look for in sports anime. But that's how it is. That's how running works. That's how those competitions work. So they couldn't really stray from that. And I think they did the most with what they have. Just be aware, if you're interested in the show, that it's, not on the same level of hyper thrills that some of the other sports animes do. This is much more laid back. And the interesting part is how the characters, while they're running, realize something about themselves, come to a moment of self-actualization, of self-refinement, of improvement, be it physical or psychological, and have this revelatory moments when it comes to certain things in their lives and certain developments and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the good stuff. That's the stuff that you should go in. If you're into that stuff, that's what you should go into this show for, because that's definitely in there and that's very, very good. But maybe not for just for the sports aspect itself. But yeah, it's still great to look at. And I think the relay race style, especially at the end, offers a good opportunity to organically wrap up all the different character arcs one by one. Because, all the characters have to run their parts, like one after another. So every time they hand over their sash to, I think that's what it's called, to a new team member, like this thing that would normally be a baton in short distance relay race. It's like, okay, this is where the moment of self-realization ends, and that's where that particular character arc ends. And it's up to the next character to continue that work and then, have their own development and their own realization. And normally in a show where this would happen one after another, like, okay, now that character's done, now that character's done, it would feel really, ham-fisted and weird in terms of pacing and in terms of structure, because that's not how you really do it. In this, it makes sense because, each character has to run in this race and each character has to run one by one. So it feels like natural that, each character would come to their moment of self-realization one after another. So that might be luck that just by nature this competition is structured that way, and this is how they can handle it in the show. But it works out surprisingly well, in my opinion. It doesn't feel ham-fisted, it doesn't feel weird in terms of pacing or anything, and you basically get pretty damn good character moments one after another. There are a lot more before this race, but at worst, in this race, it's like a nice bow on a character arc that was established before. And it's like, even if you got a better moment for one of those characters earlier in the show, you again get like this nice wrap up for that character in this final race. And that's cool. It's good stuff. So yeah, of course, I have to mention the best boy, the actual good best good boy in the show, which is Nira, which is Haichi's dog, or the dog of the dorm, I guess, who's one of the fucking cutest things you have ever seen. He's I think he's a Shiba Inu. He's kind of always around in the show naturally, but there are also these great eye catchers in the middle of each episode when the commercial would air or something, and it's always like this cute animation of Nira being a dog and just doing dog things and being funny and just barking at the end. It's very cute. It's super cute, and yeah, I really like Nira. It's a great side character, and always does his part to support the team. That's great. I also like how honest the show treats some of its characters. like Kakeru, it comes across, like I mentioned, Kakeru had some trouble with his coach because his coach was kind of an asshole, like in terms of really drilling the team members and being like this kind of army drill instructor guy. And if some of the people didn't cut it, he would just like kind of, I don't know, mob them out of the team and stuff like that. But in the beginning, it's framed like as Kakeru just lost his cool and just punched the coach out for being an asshole. But then you get the scene where he fesses up and says that he used the coach who was treating this first year like a piece of crap to vent his pent-up feelings. And it was not really about justice for a teammate or righteousness. He punched out the coach to find release for his own anger and frustration over hating being in this team, which he didn't feel like he belonged into and where he didn't really feel like he could advance. And yeah, I like that the show is honest and doesn't make it like, oh, he's like this super righteous character. And, you know, the show doesn't frame it like he did a good thing, out of righteousness, that, you know, punching his coach, that was the right thing to do, and that everyone else later was like standing against him, and really he's the good guy. No, the show says like this was an immature way of handling these things, and that is his own fault. The way how things panned out after that, the bad blood with his teammates, him losing his career chances in running and everything, and all of that shit that came to him as a result from that was also his fault. And there are certain shows who don't do that, who are so intent on telling you that, hey, no, this character is a good guy, he always does the right thing, but the world is just out for him, the world just trying to just put him down and treating him like a piece of shit, but he's the good guy. I wonder if that's going to come up in the show we're going to talk about next season. But no, I'm really glad Run with the Wind doesn't say that, doesn't do that. It's saying like, no, this Kakeru, handled that situation badly, and he admits that, and he has to live with that, and his teammates help him work through that as well, and come to realize that, and that's a really great part in the show, which I really liked. I also like that when Haiji is initially throwing around the whole idea of competing in the Ekiden. There's everyone is being like, Musa, well, why are you complaining? You're fine, right? I mean, you're a black guy, and the show acknowledges that the black guy being automatically a good runner is a stereotype and kind of racist. And I have also not really seen the show do that before as well. And Musa's like, no, what the fuck, guys? This is racist. This is a stereotype. Stop it. And it's like, yeah, it kind of is. So thanks for acknowledging that, Run with the Wind. And I really like that. And he's not the best runner in this. I mean, the people later call him Ace, but that is more for different reasons, because he's like the emotional support of the team. He's the heart. He's the guy who's always full force behind everyone and supportive and like just a genuinely cool guy. And that's why he's the Ace. Not necessarily because he's the best runner, because he's not. So that's cool. I really like that. I really like that the show is tackling that kind of thing as well. Yeah, there are several other small things I like. Another thing that the show is really good at is building up the atmosphere before an important race, before one of the qualifiers or the marathon itself. Just like establishing this kind of mood, setting the table. Just, you see scenery shots, you see people, putting up fences and putting up the goalposts and everything, just constructing the whole thing, preparing for the race in general. All that stuff, just, all the stuff happening around the race. You see a lot of that, and it's like, okay, more and more you see people, warming up and stuff like that, and it's like, okay, shit is getting serious. Then you've got, the musical support, like I said, the soundtrack is stellar again, as expected. Yeah, just all of that, and suddenly it starts raining or snowing. It's like, oh shit, how's that gonna come into play and stuff like that. The show does a really good job at getting you, despite of this not being a super direct competition, getting you excited for the race anyway. And that's great too. Yeah, I like that. I also I also like that Prince drops some nice sports manga references. I really can appreciate that. Like there's this one scene where he talks about his motivation for improving himself, for becoming actually better at running and actually enjoying it at some point, and where he derives his major motivation from when times get the toughest. And, there are name drops. Ippo, Tsubasa are mentioned. Hanamichi from Slam Dunk. So, yeah, I recognize a lot of those names. I was like, hey, he's talking to me.
I was going to ask, how deep are the cuts?
They are pretty deep. Some I didn't even recognize. I assume there's, just judging from the silhouettes, I think there's some in there from Prince of Tennis and, I some other sports anime I haven't watched. But yeah, good stuff. So that the legacy is there. That at least the author of the manga or the writer of the script knew what they were doing and had some interest in that to begin with. Yeah, don't really have much more to say about this about Run with the Wind. Aside from that, like I said, really great character development, great races. Visuals, soundtrack, everything in the show is fantastic. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. Even though it's 23 episodes, it went by super fast, and the pacing is really good. It never lingers too long on the training sessions or on one of the races. It's all very fast, and it always gets back to the character development, on the characters having good times. And yeah, it's a very feel-good show, even in its darker moments. It's like, okay, yeah, this makes sense now. And it's it's emotionally engaging. I think I'm going to quote one of the one of the conversations between Prince and Haiji at the end, where they look at Kakeru, who is running in the final race, and Haiji is like, he was enamored with Kakeru from the beginning, where it's like he saw him running, and there's of course this pretty gay imagery between those two, where it's like when they see each other running, it's like, oh my god, this is beautiful, right? This is how I want to run and stuff like that. But yeah, so they're watching Kakeru on their phone, and Haiji says it's beautiful, and Prince says it makes me hate running. It makes my efforts feel futile because Kakeru is so much better than him. And then Haiji says, arrogance is thinking hard work can solve everything, because, some of that is just down to talent. But there is more than one goal to aim for. Everyone is equal here. We're all even. We all run the same path, but we arrive at different finish lines. And it's a very interesting sentence, with an interesting underlying theme that, again, relates to the whole idea about running in the show being about living your life. You can perfectly match that to finding your way in life, and not trying to always match your way of living to the way other people are living it, or feeling insecure or inadequate when looking at other people's lives. It's the same path from beginning to end, right? We start being born and we end our life by dying, and we have share some of the same roads, but we have, different finish lines, like he says. But that doesn't mean that we can't achieve things and can't achieve happiness and can't achieve a life that fits us, even though it might not be considered successful by when compared to other people. But you should always find your own way of living and the thing that makes you happy and that thing that feels right for you. And you don't always need to look at everyone else and trying to match their speed or their talent or whatever. You don't need to. I really like the theme of the show and the sentiment and the emotional through line and what it's trying to say and how hopeful it is and how inspirational it is. It's Run with the Wind is a fantastic show. It gave me more than I expected from a sports anime. And I highly recommend it. If you want to check it out, it's streaming on Crunchyroll and High Dive. And if you're in the mood for a more low-key sports anime experience or anime experience in general, with great characters, great visuals, great soundtrack, everything, I think you can't go wrong with this one. And I'm pretty sure you will enjoy it a lot. And remember, the road is right before your eyes, so keep on running. And that is a wrap on the 74th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vit.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to hear your feedback and might even read it on the show. Thanks for tuning in, we hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut!
Take care, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
It's slime time!
What do you do when you have 7 girlfriends, but they're all magical beings?
And a thrilling cat and mouse game in a demonic orphanage.